to me with the work that we do here in West Michigan. So the ODC Network is a nonprofit out of the West Michigan area. We carry out our mission in Kent, Ottawa, Allegan, and Muskegon counties, and our mission is to advance outdoor education and conservation in this area and provide equity to community members to have those privileges and what we feel are rights in their community. So today we're going to talk about communication, which it's a difficult topic and it can be challenging, but it can also be inspiring, motivating, and transforming for our organizations. So if you came in early, you got to hear my foreigner a little bit. I love the cheesy 80s videos, and it's always good to have a video of somebody that's maybe even harder to look at than me, and that sets myself up for a little confidence there. But yeah, Foreigner is one of my bands. Um, but if you look at the important part on this slide, you see my colleague Kira, and Kira is one of our educators. And you see this young person in this kayak with her, and this young person is a newcomer from Mexico, and this was this child's first time ever being to a lake and ever being in a kayak. So
Is
if
it
you look
loud enough? Turn up a little bit.
if you look at the hand, I think the hand touching the calm water really connects to the expression on the child's face. But if you look beyond the hand, you see the teacher's face. And so when I communicate with team members, as the leader of this organization, I always lead with the fact that the way that I communicate and however we're conducting ourselves is a conduit between myself, this teacher in the back of the boat, and this child in the front of the boat. And if I'm not handling my communication in the right method or means, she's not able to express herself that way. And we're not able to give this child this experience this way. So, this slide I use it in almost all my professional developments because it really connects with human connection. So we'll have a break in between here. If you need to do something, by all means. There's nothing magic in the words that I'm saying, and I know that there's things that need to be taken care of. So first and foremost, take care of yourselves, and we'll take care of each other. And I am a Google Meet user, so when I get back into Zoom, the farther it gets away from the pandemic era, the trickier it gets. So bear with me if I have to stop or change something around. Um, I always like to begin with our land acknowledgement. So today I'm in Holland, Michigan, on the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe people, including the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi, and their neighbors, the Miami and Ho-Chunk nations. But I also recognize that there are many generations and even uncountable of people who have lived here or been forced to come here that have stood on this land long before me. I also, if you haven't seen the video yet, I want to acknowledge that I'm a white male and I understand and accept the fact that that comes with privilege. And I also know that I can't undo the generations of privilege that I have received. However, my life's mission in working in the world of human relationships and young people is to use that privilege to open doors for underrepresented community members in hopes that we can achieve equity and have access to success across the board. So today we're going to go through two sections of learning based upon a couple of books. And I've participated in each of these trainings several times. So if you're like, oh, I just did this one, bear with me. And I hope that you'll find maybe you get a different approach or a different angle. Because I know that each time I've studied this with a different group of people, I've had new insights and it's allowed me to clarify things. I also want to acknowledge these are not the only two ways to um, approach communication. but they're ways that have worked with me, and I think that they're worthwhile in sharing. And the nice part about it is I really want to relate this to what our shared mission is, which is working with youth and community members. So, to begin today, we're going to kind of take a look at the macro view, which is when we think about communication with our teams, if our macro view isn't organized in a way that facilitates good communication, then our micro view, which are those small group and individual conversations, can often be really debilitated right out of the gate. So I thought it would bear some time just thinking about and addressing how, at least for me and the team that I have, we've been able to make a better scenario for individual conversations by revamping how our team works. During the school year, I manage a team of 15 educators, and it truly is a team. In order for one of my sayings is teamwork makes the team work. Dreams are dreams, but the team has to work together and has to get the work done. So that's something that's very important to me. I also know the body needs a head, and right now that's me. And I'm actually working on my ultimate goal in any job is succession to someone else that can take it over. But in the meantime, we have a cross network of teams within our teams. And then during the summer, our team expands to about 160 people. So there's a pretty big fluctuation. So it's very important that the core of our teamwork is very solid because when we expand by tenfold, we want to make sure that the culture isn't lost with that rapid expansion during that seasonal time. So when you think about cross-team collaboration or cross-classroom collaboration or um, collaboration with a parent organization or however your structure is, or even um, instructor to instructor, I would love for you to put in the chat just some of what is the biggest challenge in that collaboration for you? And that can kind of get us going with a little bit of relevant conversation right away. So I see different work ethics and values, different communication styles. Yes, yes. What else we got in here? Working virtual and not having those personal relationships. I'll touch on that for a minute. Different styles. All the ages of all the age groups that we have to address. So the spans, understanding where people are coming from in perspective, openness to other thoughts and opinions, age and experience gaps. Yeah, expectations. Come to find out, we adults benefit from clear expectations just as much as our students do. I'm a big fan of PBIS, and we try to live into that in our work teams as much. Work ethic and age gaps. So I'm going to just land on a couple of these after things have, as things pop up. So, we don't all have the same work ethic and value. One of the things I try to share with my team is, you know, there are times when we all have to be there at a certain time, or we all have to be there in a certain fashion. But when possible, let's not count the minutes, but make the minutes count. And allowing people's value system to come into the organizational value system it's a tricky thing. And that there's a lot going on with that. Different communication styles. We'll touch into that in both sessions. And I'm going through a whole study on listening right now because I often catch myself speaking too much. Ironically, here I am presenting. Yeah, I understand the age situation. I have team members that are 15 all the way up to 80. So I'm right there with you on those challenges. Communication. We have a class called it's called Natural Connections because we have so many students in digital learning environments that are struggling because they don't have the ability to communicate with people in real time and space. So it's actually a virtual class I teach. Um, I I put material online to challenge kind of how the kids think and interact, and then they actually come in person for 2 hours a week, and we take them on adventures and experiences just to develop some of those soft skills of in-person communication. But digital communication can be challenging as well. So great stuff. And, I think when I'm solving problems, I look for patterns and I see a lot of the same patterns coming through with the feedback that you all gave me. And so that's an important thing is when we're looking at communication or we're looking at team, we do 360 evaluations, which are not my favorite thing, but it's not my company, so I don't get to choose. And so on the 360 evaluations, everybody gets to throw whatever they want anonymously your way, and you have to sift through that. And it can be really hard because one person that maybe just because I'm not everybody's flavor, and that's okay. But some people, rather than just being like, Bob, I respect what you're doing, but hey, we're different. Being able to have an honest conversation, that doesn't work for everybody. So they like to use that 360 to let me know some of their feelings and concerns. And I have to work awfully hard to ignore that loud little piece of feedback and really focus in on the patterns. Because when you start to find patterns, those are the things that when you address those, you move the needle with your team. And then when you move the needle with your team, the emotional currency that you gain will often have a secondary positive interaction on that person that maybe just doesn't vibe with you. And so as I build the team, that helps people to say, hey, Katie, I know that you struggle with Bob, but here's all these things that he's really doing to help us out. And that has helped soften some of those personality differences because there is no reason to expect that every personality is going to mesh well. So, great start. And I'm not above reproach on any of these. And this is all an ongoing process for me. So, let's move along. So, when we think about the structure of teams, and so a lot of interestingly, I don't know what came first, our business structure or our military structure as we look through the history. But this is the diagram you see with the square on the top is a very common diagram of how businesses are organized, but it's also historically how our military has been organized. So it's designed for this general at the top, and then these mid levels, and then the ground folks on the bottom to go out and really do the work. And so whether we're talking about in this team of teams notion came out of the military because the military was designed for what you see in that organized structure. But then when it all goes down, what we actually have is what you see on the right. And that's vastly different in terms of communication and needs and opportunities and resources than what you see in that highly hierarchical structure. So a wise general figured out like, hey, this top-down approach is not working because these people, the four triangles on the far side, may need something that the four triangles on the other side. And if we have to go up the chain and then back down the chain, um, our losses will be devastating. And I think that holds true in many of our organizational challenges. Because when I think of the child care centers, the schools, the after school programs that I'm working in, wouldn't it be lovely if they looked like this wonderful structure that's just really, it's peaceful to look at, but in reality, what we're facing is this thing on the other side. So the first step for me is just understanding that the really clean organizational approach, um, it looks nice, but it's not realistic in many cases. And hey, if your organization works really well like this and everything's great, everything's wonderful, um, let's talk about that. But my reality lives over here, and I know most of you do too. And that's not bad. So hang on just a second. I got a little cough working. So traditional systems um, have their issues. And so when you look at this classroom, this is the quintessential classroom, and this is what I'm spending most of my career time actually breaking down is the history of this structure. Because if you know about kids, you can tell from their body language and not even seeing their face, their level of engagement is pretty low. And the same thing works for adults. If you think of this same photo of this classroom as a corporate structure, and what that leads to is slow decision making because we have to go up this. Because in this photo, there's probably a headmaster or a principal or a school leader that's down the hall in a way that won't allow this teacher to do anything without their blessing, and maybe even in this time, the blessing of the board. Because this is still in the time frame where teachers were really in a suppressed world, and especially female teachers weren't even allowed to be out walking around past 5 p.m. So that leads to slow decision making, siloed departments for us, um, and lack of adaptability. I think one of the biggest common occurrences is marketing department versus the world, right? Like we all have something we want to get out. We've got this great flyer, we've got this great idea, and then there's always this thing of like, well, hopefully we can get this over to marketing, and hopefully marketing will be able to pick it up, and hopefully marketing will get it back to us in time. And whew, I just hope we can pull this off. And then marketing will be like, well, we can or can't do it. And it's not actually marketing's fault. It's the structure that marketing doesn't get a say in a lot of our teamwork. So they're just kind of this department that's in a silo, and they're sort of this on demand, make beautiful things for us. And then that leads to a lack of being able to get the throughput at the rate and time we need it. So, in kind of looking at the diagrams a little bit more, when we think about structure, the one on the far left is command. And so like traditional, if you think about the automotive industry, it's based on what's called a command and control. There's a supervisor in an office that physically used to be above an assembly line. Then you've got floor supervisors, then you got manufacturing technicians and employees. And that's where the term from the top down came from, was the physical elevation of that manager being able to see above an assembly line and take note from their high perch where the inefficiencies and lack of productivity were occurring, and then they would send the message downstairs, and it would come down the pipe or down the line, and then workers would have to adapt. The next model then is kind of what we call the command of teams, where we have this universal leader, and then we have these departments, and they have some interaction and some interactivity, and we're starting to get a little bit more um, adaptive in how we communicate and share information. Then when you get over on this right side, you have your team of teams where you have these are your essential or your core leaders. And sometimes a department has multiple core leaders. We're sharing staff or sharing ideas, and it becomes a web more than a hierarchy. And when you get into this web, it's messy to start with, but that's when you can start to really pick up some efficiency and get your team out of siloing and get your communication going. So the premise of this is by creating this structure where it's not top down and it's not this comes from the top. We have a shared consciousness. So everybody becomes concerned about the mission, not just the manager. Everybody gets concerned about the big picture, not just the manager. And the manager is not micromanaging because everybody has shared concern. And so that shared consciousness breaks those silos, especially when we're sharing information openly. Then when we get to empowered execution, by having that web of people working together, we decentralize decision making. And one of my biggest concerns is and even with my own position that I have, is typically there's this guy. I know in elementary schools this is very prevalent. There's a guy, and the guy's the principal, and the guy makes the decisions, and that lack of empowerment is centralized, and so you get one solution stream for problems coming from that guy, and then all of our less represented colleagues who may have very creative and different approaches to dealing with any topic are completely left out of the loop, and they're only allowed to carry out what that guy is deciding should be done to deal with the problem. I think a lot of our roots of behavior in young people, other than communication and my other PD that I do, is really on centralized decision making rather than a team approach and creativity. Because the way that my underrepresented colleagues come to the table with solutions and understanding of trauma and all sorts of things that the top-down management doesn't understand is huge. And so when you get down to communication then with the individual, if they're part of the decision making, the level of care and concern for the outcome naturally raises, which then increases trust and builds relationships. And the ultimate sort of, once we get through the messiness of this different structure, is we then are able to look at adaptability over efficiency or even assumed efficiency. Like there's an assumption that that top-down approach is efficient when it actually is not. But adaptability is the most important characteristic because that allows our teams to respond quickly to change. So in that team of team transformation, to kind of simplify a little bit, um, my team and I are trying to find trust and common purpose. We're trying to establish strong team bonds. We're trying to manage and facilitate real-time information sharing. And then we want to emphasize purpose over procedure. Now, I understand because many of the spaces that I work in are licensed and there are procedures that we must follow. But I think all too often we then stack on procedures that may be counterintuitive to our purpose, and that breaks down all those other things. Um, so I want to get back into the chat now that I've sort of downloaded this information. If you have questions up to this point, you can drop those in the chat. And then I'd also like you to just maybe drop in some ways that your team currently shares information, and we'll talk about a few of those. And I'll juxtapose that to some success and failure I've had, and we'll keep moving here. So drop a question, drop something in the chat. We'll take a look at that, and we'll keep on going here. All right. So obviously in this question, there's low hanging fruit, and I think it gets down to um, meeting in person, sharing information via email, um, sharing information via text, um, having group chats, um, documents to keep things addressed, um, and then project trackers. So, cloud storage, Friday breakfast, monthly meetings, and then mind mapping. One of the experiences I had with sharing and communicating information in my team of teams, successes and failures. Um, my original aspiration was I don't want to have to burden people with getting together in person. And so we really tried hard to have a lot of reliance on emails and written documents. And what I found is all the different channels and strings and threads were causing so much stress because I had teammates that were like, is it the weekly team email, or are we looking at the Google Keep, or should we be waiting for the departmental newsletter to come out? And so we had so many different flows going. People were losing things, feeling disconnected. And all I really needed to say was like, let's carve out enough time and budget an opportunity for us to get together. um, on a frequent basis. And that has been transformative to us. The other thing that has been transformative is the use of project trackers. I myself have tons of project management training, and I'm PMP, and I love to geek out on project management and do all this stuff. And what I discovered is my project management um, geek flow was keeping my colleagues who were not necessarily trained or even interested in project management to the degree that I was from accessing that. So in the last 3 months, I've actually just slowed my role on project management. And it's almost like when you're driving a car uphill, you have a tendency to want to hammer on the gas pedal to get up over the hill, but actually, sometimes you just need to slow down to gain traction. And I found that when I slowed down to gain traction and I created project trackers that were a little bit simpler, easier for my team to access and make updates, and had better linking to central communication systems, all of a sudden the buy-in to project management and the productivity went way up. And then people were happier because they felt like they could get into the project tracker, they could move their pieces to the completed stage, they could add elements, they could add links without having it be some high faluting project management system that Bob really likes because he geeks out on that. That became an equity issue, and I had to correct that. So if you're interested in simple project trackers that still get the job done, I'd be happy to share some of that down the road. So for us, carving out some time to meet person to person has been very helpful to just even unravel some of the digital communication that is essential in a fast-moving global business world that we're all a part of, even if we work for a small organization. So on information, this is the hard part because there has been, I think, in my own work and places that I've worked at in schools, that information has been a stronghold. And it's a little bit of a power grab in my mind. And this is sometimes we have to separate feelings and facts. I have strong feelings about this, but I can also really present facts how in school structure this can be difficult. And I won't bore you with the facts of how things have gone in my world, but if this doesn't apply to you, that's okay. But in my mind, um, as long as we're maintaining the privacy of our families, because there are boundaries. When I started teaching, it was just kind of a free for all, and you could go peek on a, you could open up an IEP of just about any kid in the school and do some reading and figure something out about that kid. And what we realized is like that information you shouldn't really be concerning yourself with unless, and with the help of law and policy and better understanding, unless you have a regular and ongoing relationship with that child, that information is not pertinent to your daily interactions with that child. And so, privacy is the one of the components of safety that's non-negotiable. However, if that's all we're worried about in transparency in our organization, we've done a lot of great work to get where we need to go. But I believe that information, as much as possible, needs to be transparent and accessible across teams or groups. So you can, as you think about how I'm sharing out some of this structure of the team, I'm also hopefully dismantling barriers to communication down the road. And this is another the transformation of the U.S. military intelligence, because as the world becomes a faster place, intelligence or lack thereof or communication needs to happen faster and more efficiently in order to stay up with keeping people safe. And the problem is that the logic, quote unquote, need to know depends on the assumption that somebody in your organization actually knows who does and does not need to know which material. So some of it's very clear in policy, and that's helpful because you know, hey, I don't need to know this information. But then the rest of it, every little thing, um, is very subjective to what that person who's in the seat of like, I decide who needs to know what around here, disseminates out to our team. And that can be dangerous, and it can also create a lot of negativity, lost productivity, and lack of buy-in, and then lack of that adaptability. Because if people don't have the information they need to be flexible and adaptable in our work, then they're not able to get there. And then empowered execution. Teams need autonomy while staying aligned on shared goals. This is the hardest part, I think, because we are humanly, many of us are humanly designed to want to control things. And giving up that control and allowing for autonomy can be difficult. But when you are able to do that and still keep people aligned on shared goals, the outcomes can be extremely helpful. This is how Spotify does it, and it's a short video to think about the alignment and the autonomy.
Alignment and autonomy may seem like different ends of a scale, as in more autonomy equals less alignment. However, we think of it more like two different dimensions. Down here is low alignment and low autonomy, a micromanagement culture. No high level purpose, just shut up and follow orders. Up here is high alignment, but still low autonomy. So leaders are good at communicating what problem needs to be solved, but they are also telling people how to solve it. High alignment and high autonomy means leaders focus on what problem to solve, but let the teams figure out how to solve it. What about down here then? Low alignment and high autonomy means teams do whatever they want and basically all run in different directions. Leaders are helpless and our product becomes a Frankenstein. We're trying hard to be up here, aligned autonomy, and we keep experimenting with different ways of doing that. So alignment enables autonomy. The stronger alignment we have, the more autonomy we can afford to grant. That means the leader's job is to communicate what problem needs to be solved and why, and the squads collaborate with each other to find the best solution.
So this one for me personally has been it's been very helpful
Helpless, and
in
our
kind
product
of giving
becomes
up
a
that control. Because I have worked in this environment before, and I've worked in this before too. This is the classic, the one in the bottom right corner, how someone is working, hope someone's working on the river problem, and then all of our staff are just totally kind of figuring it out on their own, and they feel isolated, and sometimes that supervisor or principal or manager or building leader that's like, I pride myself on giving full autonomy to my team. That's counterintuitive, and people actually resent that. That's where you get the pushback on autonomy, where people will come in and be like, "I just want to be told what to do." Well, people don't actually want to be just told what to do, but they're somewhere in the middle of being told what to do and being told, "Hey, just figure it out, and I'll be here in my ivory tower, um, doing thoughts and prayers or positive vibes, whatever I do." So finding that way to be able to support that team in coming with their solution and then giving them the pathways to implement has been imperative. Now, it requires a transformation process, because I found that when I started doing this with teams, they often would come to me with something as simple as like, "Hey, the floor on the office floor has just been terribly dirty lately." And they would say, "Bob, what do you think we should do about that?" And I have to be very careful not to be like, "Well, let's get stick vacuums and hang them up in every closet." And then, no, that's jumping to the solution stage way too quick, because my idea of stick vacuums may not actually solve the problem. So, slowing down and then telling them, "Hey, I have ideas, but I'm not going to throw this at you. I need you to think about and come to me with possible solutions, and then together we'll decide." That builds that ownership. But at first, people will feel like, "Wow, he doesn't really want to help us. He's just copping out," until you adopt their solution and you honor the fact that they come up with a better idea. And then you can kind of laugh and be like, "Look what we're doing. We put these brushes on the outside of the building, and I thought um, what would help would be stick vacuums, which actually create more work and noise." And silly me for thinking that. And then, um, Kira, you came up with this awesome idea to put these mud brushes out there, and now the floors are clean. So That's an example, and you have to really be intentional about the process in order to get people to understand that you're not just copying them out and copying out on them and putting more work on their plates. Kind of getting toward the backside of this, it is imperative then to build those trust and relationships, and so that trust and relationship, which gets us closer to thinking about those individual communications, is built through open communication, shared goals, and cross-team collaboration, which kind of sort of summates what we've talked about thus far. Larry's going to help me now, and we're going to try a little bit of a breakout room time. And I think probably 5 minutes or so should give you a chance to share a time when trust or lack of it affected your team's performance. So if you're feeling like you want to work in positive space today, you can discuss some ideas where, hey, trust really helped our team, but maybe you're just in the negative space today and you want to show the the dark side of trust. We welcome that too, because in order to get to the really good parts, we have to analyze some of the challenges. I would ask you that when you're discussing these, keep the names of people, families, children, colleagues, and organizations out of the discussion. And you can use just generic placeholders for that. That way, we'll honor where everyone is at in their journey, as well as the safety and privacy of our families. And what I'd like you to do is share a couple different ideas, and then maybe as a small group, choose one that you can bring back to the other group, and we'll look for patterns there. Larry, how you coming on this task of creating these breakout sessions?
I should be good to go. Just let me know when you're ready.
Let's do it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I would love it if some of you could share some of your highlights of your conversations, and we could just gain some insights about what you had experienced in your session, and we can use that to tie some of this together. So if you'd like to share, we may not get to every group for our time, but we'd love to have somebody share some highlights.
Oh, okay, I guess I'll go. I think, Crystal, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Okay, sorry. My name is Ella Bonner, and I'm from Disability Advocates of Kent County in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And one of the things that we shared, only because we experienced a lot of audio problems, I don't know if any other group experienced that too, but we did. And so I was able to share something that's very recent, honestly. I am now currently the new Workforce Development Manager, moving from the Youth Transition Specialist into that role. And so one of the questions that was asked of me in the interview process was, how does your team feel would adjust to you moving from a team member into that management position? And the way I answered that question was exactly what we've been talking about. I think it has a lot to do with trust, being able to trust that individual, knowing the skills that they bring or the way that they work already as a team would also be able to help manage them or take us into the next level of where we're trying to go. Also, I believe that a strong leader is also an excellent follower. In order to be able to lead, you also got to be willing to be a follower. So working alongside my team and not just managing my team is where the trust had came in. And so as a result of that, I believe the sky is the limit for us moving forward.
That's awesome. That is a tricky one. Especially in the structure of education, there's not a lot of like it's you kind of become you go from being a teacher to a team lead or a principal or something like that. So it's very common for us in situations that where we're working with youth or in something related to a traditional school structure. So I'm glad that you're able to work that out. I myself have kind of gone from like I was one of one in a department to one of 120 at times or 130 at times. And to be able to clearly articulate that I understand that the body needs a head, but I understand that there's no way that I can do this without the support of my team and being humble and willing to relinquish control and follow someone's lead as long as it fits within the parameters. So that's excellent. And I think if you continue that, there's hopefully there's some insights from this that will continue to empower that style, but also encourage you to have opportunities of knowing when you can follow and knowing when you have to sometimes be like, okay, team, we're not going to go down that path. It looks enticing, but let's draw back into this space. Because that's sort of you always got to be think of like if this really goes into a spot, it could go the other way. Thanks for sharing. One or two other groups want to share a summary?
So in our group, we were talking about us and me in particular. I'm a before and after school program, and before staff should be there at 7 a.m. That's when students start arriving. And in one of our programs, we've just had a lack of trust. People not arriving at 7 a.m. So it's kind of leaving all the burden and the opening procedures and everything on one person. And so they're really feeling overwhelmed, feeling like they don't have that communication or that trust or just that teamwork within their program. So it is causing a little bit of animosity within that small program, so or within that team. So that's kind of what we're working with right now, is that lack of trust.
That is a big one, and maybe Crystal, if you're brave in the second half of this PD, we're going to go through crystal conversations. We're going to go through crucial conversations at one point I was going to ask, would someone be willing to model a conversation with me? And I thought about, what some of the common snags and teamwork is opening. So, Crystal, you have some time to think if you would be willing to put yourself in the position of someone who has a hard time getting in for opening and allow me to take you through that conversation.
Yep.
But that is a sticker of like, are we all on the same page? There's a notion of fair but not equal,
Mhm.
because I do believe there's no greater inequality than the equality of unequals. But there also is a need to not take advantage of people who are in a position to be able to do things differently. And um, to unravel that is a mix of policy, shared respect, and I think that's a nice like lead into this part about crucial conversations is like, okay, how do we do this without having it be like there's a company in town where when you put your time card in, if something's not right, you get a point. And when you have 5 points,
Mhm.
somebody stops by and says, "Hey, you have 5 points. Your services are no longer needed. Thank you." So there's a lot of area in between. Thanks for sharing that one, and I think we can dive into
Sure.
that later on.
Thanks.
Maybe one more on that. We can hear a story or gain some insight where we can start to think about how to apply different strategies to function teams. And I have to give the disclaimer, you will not leave this training with everything figured out, but hopefully you'll leave this training with some curiosity and questions. As a teacher, even my job is not to tell you what to think. My job is to teach you how to think. And so by intention, this is not designed for you to walk away and be like, oh, here's the 5-step program. If we implement this, everything will be great. Rather to challenge kind of maybe your some thoughts and curiosities around this. So, and hopefully it begins some great discussions, or we can follow up, or we can support each other in a different way. Anybody else got one?
I'll go.
Thank you.
Marcy from the YMCA Bear County in Hastings. So there was only two of us in our group, but I gave the example of like today, I'm the child care administrator, grant administrator. So I'm at the office. We're at a small camp in our office, and our child care is located within one of the city churches. And so I've got my director is out sick, and so is the cook. So, we have cross-trained and we have staff who can step into those roles. So they needed a few things from here. We keep some extra supplies here. So I brought those over and just checked on them and had time to talk to a couple of the lead staff and say, are you okay with, do I need to be there? Do I need to come back later? What would you like? I mean, always call me. But we've built that in our trainings when they come in as young staff. And so I trust them. And I know that they are going to be able to do what's needed and meet licensing requirements and all that stuff. So yeah, you start from the beginning, cross train.
So that's you're living into the, hey, we thought the structure would be like this, and then it really is like this. And it sounds like you've got some great things going. And by what I'm hearing, there's transformative management going along with it, where you didn't just tell people, hey, your job here is to cook the food, or your job here is to wash the bottles. You've given people the resources and the opportunity to grow professionally along a broader scale, and then you're supporting the work that's being done. In essence, to create a condition where team of teams can really come into play, and that's awesome. So,
Yeah, it
unless somebody,
takes a
go
long
ahead.
time, but
Yeah. Yep. If somebody's got a burner, we can hit that. But I wanted to wrap this up, give you a small break, and then get into okay, when we have trust or we don't have trust, and we have to have a conversation, what could that look like differently? So I'm going to go back to sharing, and we'll keep on moving here. Thanks for your input. And then I think you touched on it just now as well, what's happening over there may not be as adaptive, may not be as efficient as the original system was intended. However, the nature of the world takes and negates that efficiency. And so you're relying on adaptability and rigid system. If you had a rigid system, it would break. Either Marcy wouldn't be able to be here with us today, or we'd have to close, or we would have to scramble around and create all kinds of stress. Where you've created this flexible team, and it can really thrive. And so I had this thing called the Backyard Challenge I was going to show you from when we went and we were shut down during COVID and no longer able to give in-person services. But I think, Marcy, your example of the adaptability over efficiency really was a great model of what this can do. And I promise, Marcy is not a plant. We've not spoken before this training, so thank you for the vulnerability to share your story of, hey, today we got some chaos going, but we've got great people and they're taking care of things. Last chat, just a little bit of like thinking through as you think about your scenarios. Share with us just what's one way you think your team could be more adaptable if you made a slight adjustment. You don't even need to share that adjustment, but share with us some insights about hearing some of this and thinking about it. What has awakened in your mind where you're like, oh, if we could only do this, and maybe we haven't even figured out how to become more adaptable, but you're like, boy, if we could become more adaptable in this area, it would really strengthen our capacity to serve. So if you have some thoughts, put those in the chat. We'll take a look. We'll look at patterns and keep moving along here. If you need a link or there's something you see or there's something I said about, I'm a pretty generous sharer. That's rooted in Stanford University has this thing called the D School, and they it's a school of design. You can go there. It's really high end. Obviously, it's Stanford, and they put all their curriculum materials online. It's all free access. And I was at a conference once, and I ran into somebody from the D School, and I'm like, how can you justify putting all of your like really cool protocols and everything online, and you just share it? And the guy from Stanford was like, look. If you think you can do this stuff to the degree of the genius level people at Stanford, by all means do it. We'd be happy if someone does it better than us. But we do believe in people over paper. And that was kind of it was a big change because I used to think, oh yeah, I got my cool files and my great lessons and all this stuff. And I would even like impart that to my team. But now we really believe that it's the people in the place and the relationships more important than a document or a lesson plan or a project tracker. Um, oh yeah, team is adaptable, but leadership that isn't. That's a tricky one because we have to have top-down approach, and that's a challenging one. And one of my biggest concerns is when I talk to teams and they're ready to be adaptable, but the leadership isn't. And that gets into there's a whole nother thing. Um, there's I believe it's a book. It's called Leading from Behind. I would encourage you to look at that because I've been in that situation before, and it was very easy to like get down on the leadership and really focus on trying to like bring them down, take them down, or just ruin their existence and maybe they'll go away. And when I uncovered leading from behind, it helped me gain some respect and transformation from that person versus making it a combat situation where it's like, hey, this leadership is X and I'm Y. Um, so yeah, that's a toughie. Having people take more initiative without needing step by step or repeated directions. This is one my colleagues in the engineering field um, are very vocal in our community about how we're preparing young people for the workforce. And um, this isn't educators' fault. It's a cultural thing because we got into this whole scores and proficiency, and we had to trade some of that out for people's ability to do critical thinking and problem solving on their own. My brother-in-law works for a huge medical software company in the Midwest, and he's got a team of 35 engineers. And he's like, one of the things that's really hard is they'll want to come into my office and get step-by-step instructions on how to write this code. And he's like, you have to write the code and it has to fail so that you can learn how to not make it fail. And you can't have me do it. Otherwise, I would just do all the code. I'd get rid of all of you and I would just work 24/7. So that's one that's really come up and I think out of school time has an opportunity to push back on the needle of critical thinking and problem solving by using our non-academic slash academic time to build that capacity within our kids. And then when our kids become adults, um, they can um, they can apply that. However, in the meantime, we have to learn to create a culture where people can fail freely and not feel like there's going to be a problem. People stepping up with kids who act out and have one person be in charge of discipline. For us, we've switched to an adult focused discipline program called conscious discipline. So it's more about the adult mindsets and less about the child's mindsets. That's been an interesting transformation. Um, and I'm seeing some teams that already are adaptable, so that's excellent. Okay, thank you for sharing. So in summary, we want to increase information transparency. We want cross-team, cross-personnel problem solving, and then shift from that hierarchical control, and then share that power with our teammates. And that leads us into setting conditions for really good communication and collaboration with our teams, regardless of what our role is. So I want to take just a short break. This is where you can step up, step out, refill the coffee, check the email, about 5 minutes, and then we're going to translate into like, okay, so let's say we adopt some principles or our team is really functioning. Nothing will ever be perfect. We're going to have those moments. And so when those moments come up, how do we have a crucial conversation when the stakes are high, we have opposing opinions, or there are strong emotions involved? So I want to keep on our time. Um, this is a good section. So we'll meet back and we're going to start promptly at 11:15 and we'll keep the ball rolling. So feel free to take a little space, a little time, stretch your legs, and we'll be right back at 11:15. We're going to now kind of go from that macro level of organizing a team to make conditions for communication optimal into like, all right, now this is the reality. How are we going to handle it when things aren't going just perfect as a team, and we run into a conversation that requires high stakes, is about high stakes, where we have opposing opinions or we have strong emotions. I'm going to go through brain because I always have to remind everybody that, and we're going to do it short in today's session. All behavior is communication, and when a person is trying to maybe work through a problem or issue, it's important for us to recognize not only what brain state they may be in, but the brain state that we're in. A big part of our conscious discipline is if you're emotional and the child you're working with or the adult you're working with is emotional, it is impossible to come up with a logical, sound solution. So we literally will remove our colleagues from a situation when, because I can become emotional and I need the help of my colleague to be like, hey, Bob, why don't you join the group? I'm going to work with Tony for a minute here because I'm sensing, Bob, that you're um, this is becoming a little bit emotional for you. And we know it's emotional for Tony, or I wouldn't be talking to him. So it's a tap on the shoulder to have a physical connection where my colleague understands that I'm feeling emotional and I need to rejoin the group and get my executive function back. So, real quick on brain, one of our states is that survival state. It's when we feel threatened. These are our kids and our adults that hit, kick, push, bite, scream, run away, eloping, banging, hiding, shutting down. And their intention is self-defense because they're living in a dog eat dog world right now and they need safety. Survival state needs assertive language, just the facts. We often, when a child is in survival, we try to do more and we need to do less because all that extra is difficult to take in. Breathing, stretching, music, movement, knowing that maybe there's a safekeeper box, um, being consistent and predictable. Then there's the emotion state. The world's not going my way. I'm unconscious. My awareness is unconscious. I can only access a playlist in my brain. This is where you see, I taught middle school for 14 years and I feel like I lived in this space with the brain development, attention seeking, relationship resistance, clinginess, perfectionism, name calling, social exclusion. So all along that domain of issues, and the developmental lead during our emotional state is to find the connection. And then your intention in that state is just make me feel better, and then the world will go and have the world go my way. And then our skills. I talked about some of these spreading rumors. This is where this is the root of internet issues comes from when people are in their emotion brain. I don't think anybody has logically gone online and done cyberbullying to their friends or their family members. This is the root of many stereotypes of things like Karens and Kens and all those things in our society. Um, and these are kind of some of the wants during this time. Then there's our executive state, which is when we're conscious, we're curious, we're reflective, we're offering help. Um, we want to be able to solve problems in social settings. We're willing and we're empathetic and we want to resolve conflict. And our intention is to adapt and respond to the situation at hand. So think about the states and think about when you have that one-on-one conversation, creating a space when you and that person are both in your executive state through intention and honesty and vulnerability. Because having this conversation, when you're both emotional, will not, you might get through it, but it will not create the outcome that you're looking for, nor will it create the high quality, sustainable, long term solution that you want. Executive state regulates thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, applies skills for goal setting, adapts to our situation. And we all flow through these states. I'm sure that there was a moment when Marcy got there this morning and realized all these things were happening that she maybe fell out of her executive state for even just a minute or two and became a bit emotional of like, oh, I trust my team, but is it going to be okay? And sometimes even the like asking them in perpetuity, are you going to be okay? Do you need me to come over there? Is that just that emotional feeling? And then the team supported her, got her back into her executive state. And then she was like, we can do this. We've got a great team. They've been trained well and I trust them. So it's okay. Feelings are feelings, and we sometimes can control them. We sometimes cannot control them, but what we can't do is judge someone for where they are at in their brain state. Um, quick poll. Just drop a couple things in the chat. What's your biggest challenge you face in workplace communication? And that will help steer maybe a little bit of how I approach the next few minutes. So if you could quickly throw a few things in, that would be awesome. Biggest challenge on workplace communication. Ah, the old-fashioned telephone game. So things are getting lost. Too much at one time, overload. People not reading. Yeah. Um, yeah. That like the end around, like I'm not gonna communicate with my pathway, especially if it's hierarchical and many organizations are hierarchical and that's not an indictment and team of teams may not be possible, but when we don't follow that channel that has been laid out, that can be challenging. Miscommunication. So what was my intent versus what was actually heard or absorbed? Listening to respond and not listening to get an understanding. Yes. I'm doing my big study on a book called Just Listen right now, and I'm really learning to like slow down and listen to understand rather than slow down to come up with the solution in my brain. Personal feelings being brought into the table. Um, when it's you're just asking somebody to do part of their job and it's not personal. I'm coaching eighth grade girls basketball right now, and boy, I got a young lady who's kind of like almost our adopted kid, and I'm trying to get her to stop traveling, which is moving without dribbling on the ball. And you would think that I'm asking her to completely change her ideology and who she is. So that can be really tough. Chain of command to voice a problem, the amount of information to communicate, methods of communication being custom to everyone's area of strength and receiving communications. Oh, that's a tough one. Like, how are we going to bundle everything up so it's nice and tidy? That's impossible. So, we have to be able to establish ways to get grace. All right, let's move along. Thanks for sharing some of the challenges that you face, and hopefully that would allow me to bend some of the comments to where we need to go to help you. So I'm going to talk about a crucial conversation. It's when the stakes are high, emotions are or have been strong, or we have differences of opinions. So An example would be giving performance feedback in a certain setting or way can be awfully crucial. And it's okay to have a crucial conversation. Addressing a conflict between employees is always that's a crucial conversation. If we have resistance to change, handling that and talking about it, that's a crucial conversation. A not crucial conversation would be like, hey, could you get your timesheets taken care of and reconcile your P card by the end of today? That's not crucial. That's just a conversation. So it's when those things they become um, into that next level. So sometimes that P card request can start to become crucial when emotions start to take over. A person avoids you or shuts down and shifts from curiosity to defensiveness. So um, when I go from being like, Dave, why do you need this by 3 p.m.? You know that I'm doing a professional development to, um, you know what, Dave, you just don't even have a clue what I'm out here doing in the field, and all you're worried about is your bean counting. Oof, that's a sign that, hey, there's a crucial conversation brewing. And for us, that's where we kind of pause it, name it, and readdress it when we kind of come into a little bit more of a calm state. Um, have you ever seen a conversation turn crucial at work, and what happened? In the essence of time, I think I'm not going to dump this into the chat because we all work in places where there's a lot going on. I'm sure that we've seen crucial conversations happen at work, and the outcomes can vary from, boy, that was rough. People will be like, I'm out of here, and they'll separate from that conversation because they don't want to have that negative energy in their space. Or sometimes it turns out really well and things go on. And sometimes people are forced to or they feel compelled to change their employment, which turnover is costly for all people involved. And we always want people, if you find an opportunity that's great for you, these are just jobs and we want the best for you. But we wouldn't want a crucial conversation to force you and your family to make a job change that would also impact us in a turnover if we could have just had a better conversation. So, in order to have that crucial conversation with that person, we have to manage emotions and stay focused. And we do that by mastering our story. And I think this is hard for me as an educator. Um, and when I say separate, I don't mean ignore, but separating feelings from facts. So if I feel a certain way, I need to understand that that feeling is real and it's legitimate. And lately, we did some office changing, and there was this notion of like, hey, we're not going to have a cleaning service anymore. And that gave people a lot of feelings. And the fact was the cleaning service was costing us $32,000 a year. And the bathroom was actually getting cleaned at 9 p.m. every night. So it would be really nice in the morning. But by 2 p.m., that bathroom was no cleaner than anything else. But people had rooted feelings, and years ago, they were asked to do some unspeakable things that were way out of their job description. And those feelings have held with those team members that there's no way they would think about adapting their mode to um, help out with the cleaning rather than paying the money. Even when they said, hey, take out of the 32,000, take 29 and split it up with your team. They're like, nope, we are not cleaning this office because we've been asked to do this type of work before, and that's just the beginning. We're here to do this, not that. And that is a strong feeling, even though there's all these facts that say, hey, if each person just kind of tidied up the bathroom after the use, maybe we could save $32,000. I'm not going to say where that is going to land yet because we've decided to let it roll for a while. And then we're going to continue to collect facts, honor feelings, and create patterns where people can be supported. So, where we get into assumption is the meaning we assign based on emotions. And those can cause our conversations to go off the rails. Here's a short film.
So a woman was a little behind on her way to work. She missed the train and was going to be some time until the next. She stopped by next door to grab a coffee. She saw some cookies and thought those looked good. She bought a box as she thought she may get hungry. She took a seat near a man and started reading a book. While she was reading, she happened to see the man sitting near her grab a cookie from the box. So she was initially disgusted by this, but decided to disregard it. She grabbed a cookie herself and went back to her book. The man finished his cookie and then grabbed another cookie. Every time he grabbed a cookie, so did she. This continued for some time. When there was one cookie left, the man grabbed it, broke it in half, offered it to her, and smiled. She was extremely irritated and thought to herself, this guy's a total whack job. The man then got up and left. She texted her friend about what happened. She just couldn't believe it. As she got up to leave, she grabbed her jacket, and there she saw a full box of cookies right there.
Ooh.
She was totally surprised, completely shocked. She then realized that the cookies she was eating were not hers. They were the other man's. So while she was angry and irritated, the man was being generous and kind. She felt so bad, but the man was gone. We shouldn't be so quick to make assumptions about people and situations. You never know the circumstances.
Okay, so I love this video for us because it's totally like when you watch it, you're not thinking like, are they talking about me? Because it's a situation for those of us that are in out of school time programming. We don't have time to go to a coffee shop and buy a box of cookies, right? But this one just really hit me as like, wow, okay. And it just popped up a lot of times when I get emotional and I quickly dive into a crucial conversation the wrong way and it becomes assumption city. Those are some of the lowest moments in my career that I've had where I'm like, when I see the box of cookies and I'm like, oof. So that is one that really has tied that in for me, to think more closely about where am I making assumptions, because we're naturally going to make them. And so the harder we work to try to look for them, the more we'll find.
So a woman was a little...
So there's that piece. And then so kind of moving on to the next thing is, if we want to have that conversation, we want to think about the facts, we want to think about our assumptions, and then creating a safe space for dialogue. If people don't feel safe, they will react with silence or violence. Here's this guy. I'm going to keep my political feelings out of this, but I didn't even realize it was him until after I chose the video. So I'll let you take out of it whatever you'd like, and we'll just keep it at that.
And that is it for us today. Now, I can't read it. There's no words on it. All right, go. In 5, 4, 3. That's tomorrow, and that is it. In 5, 4, 3. That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. And we will leave you with a... I can't do it. We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live. Thing sucks. And that is it for us today.
So there's a guy that definitely chose violence over silence when he was having a crucial moment. And that was a pretty big outburst when a different type of conversation may have allowed this to go differently. Now, on a lighter note, here's the silence.
You look so handsome. You look really handsome,
This dog had just been to the groomer, and this was the ride home.
Benny. Can you look at your mama? He's ignoring me because I took him to the groomer. He hates going to the groomer, but it's so hot, so he had to get shaved. So he won't make eye contact with me. He does this every time. Benny? Benny, you look so handsome. Benny, can I have a kiss? Benny. Can mommy have a kiss, Benny? I love you. You're a good boy. You want to go get a treat? Oh, nice.
So there's a lot of pet videos where the pets give the owners the silent treatment. That's a pack instinct, but it can end. She got it. She got the dog to at least give a glance with something that the dog found appealing, even though it was very unhappy about the situation it had been put in. So to keep people out of that space, once we have people in once we have people in that safe space, mentally and physically, our next step is to use neutral language. We want to listen actively, and this is another tough one for me, especially I'm busy, I have a lot going on. I just want this person to come in on time and get their job done. In my mind, it's very simple. And so it could be difficult for me to listen actively. And so here, I need to be curious and ask open-ended questions.
First, there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
You know, however, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
So notice the body language as soon as she said, "You have my undivided attention." And if you like the show, this is like one of her quintessential parts of acting greatness here. So there's the first step, is she has acknowledged that he is seeking undivided attention.
No way!
It's true. But the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, well, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes. Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Oh, wait a second. Who's they?
The Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
So it gets back to its comedic intent that there's just a lot going on, and eventually she just wants the butter. But you notice when she started being curious, she gave the undivided attention. She started asking some open-ended questions that allowed him to fill in the gaps. The dynamic of the conversation, even though this was satirical in nature, it holds true in real life, that once you shift the conversation into this mode, then a lot of times it can really change how that person is perceiving you caring about their issue. So I liked that clip for that purpose. So when we get into having that conversation, once we've established the facts and assumptions, and we've done our best to separate that out, we have established safety. We have a plan to be able to be in a space mentally and physically to give undivided attention to the conversation. And then we're ready to be curious and listen to others' perspectives. It's time for the conversation. And in my world, it's best to do a couple things for me. I actually schedule these and say, hey, Crystal, we're gonna on Thursday, and we're gonna have a crucial conversation, and nothing will get my anxiety going is when our CEO says, Bob, you need to stop by the office tonight before you go home at 6. I got something I have to talk to you about because I ran into a donor, but I just really need you to stop by. That will cause me to have an anxiety meltdown until I know what the topic is. Like, are they mad at me? Did I screw something up? Did I embarrass myself? Did I embarrass? I think of all the bad things because that's my trauma, my baggage. And he just wanted to talk to me about something else. So I try to be specific about the topic and say, Crystal, today at 4 o'clock, we're going to have a crucial conversation about our startup of the day, and I want to work through it with you, and I want to go through this crucial conversation. We've all been through this book together, so I want you to jot some things down before you come, and we're gonna talk with each other about this. So that's my setup. So Crystal knows that okay, this is happening. We're gonna talk about this. And then when I'm planning for this conversation, I'm going to follow this state process. And the state process is I'm going to share my facts. I'm going to tell my story. I'm going to relate or ask for other people's path. I'm going to talk tentatively, and then I'm going to encourage testing. Okay. Now, for me, this is a very important component that I've adopted, and I think it's mentioned in the book, but it really has helped me, especially I'm 6'5". You've now figured out that I'm fairly loud or whatever it is. This is me. I'm a lot. So I will tell my teammates because there's this little Bob inside is like really nervous about this conversation. And in my root, I just want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to feel like they love the ODC network as much as I do. And it's not a job, it's a lifestyle and all these other things. But there's this thing. So I will lead my conversation um, in a certain fashion. And Crystal, are you willing to go through this with me?
Sure.
Okay. So if we were in person, I'd have some swag for Crystal or something, but I appreciate your willingness on a Friday to get into this situation. So we're going to just play this out, and Crystal will play the role of the opener that maybe isn't truly opening, and I'll play the role of the supervisor. And and here we go, and you can just kind of take notes and gauge for yourself if I go through this process because I'm learning how to do this as well, even though I'm often presenting on it. So, hey, Crystal, thanks for stopping by. You know, as you know, I called this crucial conversation, and I want to tell you this first. This makes me nervous. And I don't know about you, but when I have these, they're often, they stir up emotions and feelings because I have anxiety about these crucial conversations. And, you know, I've been your supervisor for only, I think, like 2 minutes now. And it really hasn't given us that great of a chance with all these kids and everything going on to truly understand the common ground that we walk on. So I'm nervous about this conversation from the fact that I want it to go well. I want to make sure that you're heard, but I also want to make sure you understand this topic about our opening that we're going to open with. So I needed to be able to just be very honest with you that this is not easy for me.
Okay, thank you.
But we're gonna get through it, and the outcome is this: we have this wonderful mission with these young people that we're working with, and we have such a power to bring equity and carry out the mission and give these kids a safe, loving, and exciting place to be. Let's use that as our guiding principle as we go through this. So, um, I'm going to begin to kind of just share with you some of the information that I've collected and talk with you about the facts that we have centering around our opening. So, the expectation is that for our opening team, if we can all arrive at 7 o'clock, that allows us to have the capacity to, as a team, get our space open, make sure that everything's taken care of, make sure that it's safe, and make sure that we're ready to be able to have the impact that we need to have on these kids. Because as you know, they're going to come with sometimes empty hearts and empty bellies, and we have to fill them right away when we get here. And that is a fact because you know our kids and you know who's coming through the door and you know what they need. Um, and I'm noticing that that's been a challenge for you. And I'm noticing that there are times consistently when you're coming into the space and others have already gotten started with that process and they're feeling when we don't all begin together that it's harder to get the work done. And then it's harder to have that ability to prepare ourselves mentally and physically for the kids to be there. And in my world, this is just my story. I believe that we can't count the minutes, we have to make the minutes count. But I also understand that we're part of a team and we have to get this thing launched so that we can carry out our mission. And that includes me. I need to be there for our team and I need to be there for you. I have kind of talked to some of the other folks, and what I'm seeing, they're also feeling. And they're not, this isn't a situation where they came to me and they want you gone. It was me asking them, how does this make you feel? So that I can help you understand the importance of this collaboration in the morning. And realistically, the truth of the story is, for them, this is not the most inspiring part of the day. The inspiring part of the day is when our kids come, and they just really feel like, as do I, it's very important for us to carry through that as much as we can consistently to be able to make sure that we can share in the positive experience of our mission. So now I just want to kind of hear a little bit of your perspective and see what your story is and see if I can understand more um, what's going on with you and what's going on with the situation and make sure that I'm not making assumptions about something that may be occurring that your team and myself don't even know.
Okay, thank you. I would say that in the mornings, I live further than all of my coworkers, so it's, sometimes traffic can take me a little bit longer to get there, or I'm letting my team know at least when I'm going to be late. So I'm
Hmm.
not, sometimes I don't think it's that big of a deal because I'm letting them know that I won't be there on time so that they know kind of what they need to get done in the morning if I'm not there.
Hmm. Okay. Um, yeah, that could be challenging. Um, do you have in mind, um, is there something that we could do to support you? Is there something that we could do um, for you, with you, just to tentatively see if we can get this pattern into a place where it's more equitable in terms of solution? Do you have any ideas? Or how can we help? Because we're talking about this bridge we all have to walk across every day, and it's our bridge between our personal life and our professional life. But we know that when we cross the bridge, one does not get left behind. It all comes along with us. But we also have to be able to carry on the professional life. And I think all too often we forget that we're carrying double baggage when we're at work. And I want to honor that. But do you have ideas for a solution, or how can we help you to kind of rectify this situation and get to this place of equity? Do you have thoughts about that?
Maybe I just need to set my alarm clock 10 minutes faster, 20 minutes faster, so that I can ensure that, take into account any possible traffic or anything that could happen on my way into work so that I could be there for my teammates and the students.
Yeah, that just reminded me of I was struggling when I played basketball as a high schooler, and my coach, I'd walk in just like at the last minute or a few minutes late, and I wouldn't have my jersey on, and he would just tell me, Bob, if you're 5 minutes early, you're 5 minutes late. And as a young person, that was really hard for me to hear. And I'll tell you what, if just setting your clock back a little bit is a solution that works, and when we test this out, it takes care of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what, you've owned 100% of the solution, and I really appreciate that. However, if it doesn't work and there are still barriers to you getting there,
Mhm.
I want to be able to like engage with more complex strategies to deal with this problem. Because I think what you've mentioned is it is the low hanging fruit, and sometimes the low hanging fruit can get us through that. But I also have to let you know that this might not result in the ultimate solution that we need. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
So let's test it out for a while. Because I do have other ideas. Would you potentially be interested in shifting your shift? Would it be better for you to be on the 10 to 6 team versus the 7 to 3 team? Or do you have any interest in that?
Yeah, I mean that would be something that I'd be willing to look into.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You know, sometimes we think the more drastic solutions are negative. And there's been seasons of life where maybe instead of 40, you're a 36-hour person or you're a 31-hour person. And if we could accommodate that, um, I would not begrudge you if you said, hey, for the next couple years until my kids get to where they need to be, I need to be part-time. Because we would rather um, give you a schedule that works for you than to try to fit this like round peg into a square hole. And I know it's hard to, we don't want to have to replace a team member. We
Mhm.
want to be able to keep you. I can't necessarily say that we can do all these things, but I want you to know I'm thinking big about this while we're trying this small solution.
Thank you.
How do you want to deal with like I think we need to kind of maybe set the reset button a little bit, which I can help with that. And then I think there's a little piece with your team where I think it's important for us to be vulnerable about the solution that we're going to try. And I think you can be like, "Hey team, I see you. I I appreciate the fact that you've been there for me.
Mhm.
I'm working on a couple solutions with Bob, and then I can come back to the team and say, "Hey, we want to have what we set out. The expectation is we're going to all of us together." And then I'll tell you what, in the meantime, Crystal, if you think there's a situation where you're going to be this alarm clock thing is not working once, just give me a call and I will fill in for you, and that at least bridges the gap with your teammates. That doesn't solve the problem,
Right.
but if I'm there and I'll be like, "Hey, Crystal, we're still trying to figure this out, but I'm here to help you," and I do the toilets that morning, I'm
Mhm.
not above doing that, and that helps create just a little bit of a buffer until we solve this problem in a sustainable way. Like I said, the alarm clock thing may be the ultimate solution,
Mhm.
but in the meantime, let's not let lack of communication keep us from being able to continue to process into the ultimate solution. It's so important that if you feel like this isn't working, you let me know right away so I can clean that toilet and get the doors open and do the trash because
Mhm.
that's part of being a leader of a team of teams is I will step into that and I'm not above that work. Does that sound good?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate
I
it.
think we're good. I've taken some notes. Let's give this a minute. And if I think it's important that we have a little bit of a feedback loop, not about being on time, but just how this crucial conversation went, because it's important that as we go through this process, we're continuing to look at solving the problem, but improving communication. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll put some time in your Google Calendar. Okay. So, out of the scene, a really good therapist once told me that when my person is talking, in order to let them know that I'm still engaged with them, the body language and if you've ever been to therapy, you'll notice that the I do a lot of the talking and the therapist does a lot of the listening. But every once in a while, you'll hear that mm-hmm, hmm, hmm, mm-hmm, and that's just a nonverbal. I'm not weighing in. I'm not fixing your problem. But that little semi-verbal acknowledgement lets Crystal know, hey, I'm still with you. I'm not thinking about the fact that I'm leaving town in 8 minutes. I'm hanging in there with you. So that's a strategy that I've kind of stolen from that. Um, thoughts. Um, if anybody has some comments or feedback, did we do it? Did we get there? My sense was this would normally be more interactive, but I didn't want to put Crystal on too much of a spot here with her brave willingness to role play. So that would be my one critique on myself, but it was with intention. Any other feedback or input, or hey, I noticed, or I wonder, or it reminds me of. I'll drop those in the chat, and then you can actually feel free to speak up a little bit. I noticed. That's positive feedback. I'll say I noticed. When I'm working with my team, I'll say I wonder. That's for my little bit cooler feedback. And then if I want to connect to a situation, I'll use it reminds me of. And so I notice is warm, I wonder is cooler, and it reminds me of is a great way to have a conversation prompt around feedback. Any thoughts? And feel free to unmute yourself and share. This is the part where I know if we were in person, it'd be so much easier for people to have some dialogue, even in a larger room, if we were in a circle of tables or tables of tables. So I understand the trepidation around sharing feedback.
Hey, Bob, there's quite a few things in the chat.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I'll check in on that.
yeah, they're writing them in the chat. But positive feedback on both sides is always important. And respect. You need to be respectful of each other, even if you don't see eye to eye, right? So, and it's sometimes hard, but you need to use like those cues you were talking about.
Yeah.
Just I always like take a breath. What's the important thing? Like it's the facts that kind of, you know.
I'm seeing
So-
those. Positive feedback is important. There's a 5-to-1. I try to accentuate the positive with 5 pieces of positive feedback to every piece of cooler feedback. Also, the notion of just presuming positive intent is so hard. Like, all I could think about, even in this role play, is like, doggone it, Crystal, just get to work when there's something. She didn't even share. I guarantee it's not really the alarm clock. Something's going on that is a barrier for her, and she's not waking up every day saying, "Hey, I'm gonna totally put the wood to my team, not show up, not do my thing." Nobody does that at the beginning. But if this thing runs out of control and the negativity grows, then there will be all that negative culture where she'll get more divisive and her team will become more divisive. And that's where it really can break down into then with intention, people are being negative. So um, thank you for that. There's a ton of resources online. I'd love to continue the conversation. This has been paramount to my ability to lead a team, both in how we organize our team, but then how do we have those difficult conversations. There's a great book study they can share with you, scripted things to take your team through. It's modularized, but there's also tons of free things online. I'm also happy to help out as well. Anything that allows us to get in a position where our team can provide that equity for students is wonderful. So I do want to hold some space for Larry to put the link to the survey in the chat so y'all can get your professional development credits and hours, and then save a little space for any questions or answers. And you can always follow up with me or with anybody else at any time here. There's my email. Larry, you got anything for us on the survey situation you want to hop in with?
Yes, thank you all so much for being here today on Valentine's Day, on this Good Friday. The link that I put into the chat, I'll resubmit it. The first 2 letters are missing. But I also have a QR code for those who like using those. So give me just a second, I'll get that up.